So hello, good afternoon, everyone. We're so happy to have you here to talk about the launch of the Tahatikonhsontóntie Quebec Network Environment for Indigenous Health Research. Today is the 18th of Tahatikonhsontóntie, which is January in English, janvier en français, which is one of the first days of our midwinter festival for in Haudenosaunee culture. We felt that this was an appropriate day to move forward with this next stage of development for the network because it represents the new year. You're stirring the ashes and you're getting ready for a new cycle of ceremonies. So this network has been around for a little bit and we've been working hard behind the scenes, and we're ready to show everyone what we've been up to and invite people to become involved. But before we move any further, I wanted to invite the Gwadundi Amelia McGregor to give an opening for us all.
Swadahunsi uskanikari wesa, te Gwadundi Ujats, the Riscarewagan, you will get the roda. Wagiri Wanudu said the Gawadu Stuma, Agawano, Senegal, you could at the road. Just could handle the Wadaswa, Onakti, a Handugari Wadeko, go on ahead to. Just could get Kadaso, they can Horadus, Wagwegans, what's go do, Swadahusade. Tano Oni, Onakti, a Canado, Nene, eat Nista, you Hodade. I was the joke de Agamha Oni, Ayugadagari dege. Tano Dogazu to that sege, Onakti, a Canado, Nene, Godu Sua Dano, Nene, Godu Sua Dano, Ganegarunu, Dinora, Dioscat, Cynthia Guegu Guy, Tonioto Nigua Nigura. Tano Oni Sego Dogazu to that sege, Onakti, a Canado, Garones Negudirio, as a god. Laudi neha dano oni laudi waru idwax ne ayagoda gariteke toniotu nigwa nigura dano oni sego onaktia kenado ga runes nene iti nistaha dano jogde gudka one nya dego dano one onakti ogwire dano garunda suwa nesaga nene de kenu waradu jogde yuna da garide toniotu nigwa nigura. Tano oni dogas sego onaktia kenado ga agaya nere de donados nene uji nuwa suwa asekaru no haru dio de jogde la di hunsa waye tano oni onaktia kenado ne John Hekwa nene asa de donados ne onaste onusa da tano ozehe da suwa jogde yudagari dege nene duatsta nene aido to dagari te ke toniotu ni kwa nigura. Tano oni tokazu watu datsige onaktia kenado giga ga runes nene jita agu azega yuwesu yukwa tunte jini wa niziles. Jiniore a yoskat sedo watu ketsko in jini wa niziles tani yukwa tunte ji radirande de jogde yukwa tsenuni. Aya oski ji runoha oni auna dagari te ke toniotu ni kwa nigura. Tano Oni sego onaktia kenado ga runes nene te duat katos ne ona kahi sua dano oni nene kahi de duat katos nene jogde idowax nene nono yugayote toniotu ni kwa nigura dano oni sego onaktia kenado ga runes nene kayeni ni kawirage tano oni nene iti sotagu ara di weras aya uslo noha oni hona dagari de toniotu ni kwa nigura tano oni onaktia kenado gara joke neka garakwa asugwati ayoska si di hoswati du tano rotari hado aya uslo mha oni joga do hiara toyo ni kwa nigura tano oni sego onaktia kenado nene iti sotagu tano oni iti sotane asataka garakwa aziga gamha yaguyo de jogde nene ka aroko domunes ya de dort katos ne aya uski jogde gamha ona yugoda garitike tonioto na nigura oniki toniore wagadari watkwe ni nyakwe doga tenes wageni gurha aya uski ga kanzu watskodu doga izan zuwa dasudara nyawo jiwas kwa damusare de kwa dundi yuda saris kare wode ni wagi roda Nyawa.
Meow. Okay, Morgan, can you go to the next slide? So the Tahatikonhsontóntie Québec NEIHR's mission, it represents a center for research and training and community mobilization and intercultural knowledge sharing for Indigenous health promotion in Quebec. We just wanted to show a couple of pictures of some of the people that were involved with the grant development. And I think there are some people listening today who are in some of these photos, so surprise. Next slide, please. Here are some of the people that were involved. Dr. Trina Delormier is the nominated principal applicant. I don't think Alex is here. Yeah, so there was a lot of contribution, a lot of help, a lot of engagement and commitment to the development of this proposal. And I'm gonna pass it on to Trina to talk about that time in the NEIHR's development. Trina?
So
next slide, please, Morgan.
good morning and welcome everybody. I'm Trina Delormier and I'm the nominated principal applicant for this research project. I'm from Kahnawake and I've been working with the Kahnawake Schools Diabetes Prevention Project, which is the host or the base for this network. And the NEIHR project, the Network Environment for Indigenous Health Research, began with an idea that was stimulated by a funding opportunity from Canadian Institutes for Health Research. It was a letter of intent for a development grant, and we were successful. Many of the same members who are part of this PI research team now, we put together that letter of intent to propose developing the network. And with the funds that we got for that, we were able to bring together partners, and we were able to hire Morgan Phillips, who just was freshly, I think she was just freshly finishing or about to finish her PhD, to help with putting that big grant project together, which funded what we have the NEIHR. So we received word that we were successful with that at the end of 2019. And that's when things really started with the funding for this grant. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, we've already been at this for over 2 years in the idea of its development. And again, we sprung this idea out of the Kahnawake Schools Diabetes Prevention Project, which is 26 years old this year, going on 27 years old this year, because the project has always been guided by community and has looked at health issues that were relevant and were expressed as needed by the community. And so the model of doing research this way fell naturally to how we do things in our Haudenosaunee and Kanien'kéha traditions of decision-making and our responsibilities. And it's from that foundation that we wanted to continue doing research in this way, but also link with other communities, other researchers, other opportunities to bring together working in this way, centering communities. And this is why we propose that we develop the network or have the network based in Kahnawake, founded at KSDPP, but again, welcoming and inviting anyone, the communities that would benefit from this to join. And so with that, I'm going to give it back to Kalia, who's going to talk a bit about how our governance is set up.
Thanks, Trina. Morgan, can you go to the next slide, please? So one aspect about the governance that we wanted to focus on specifically here is to familiarize people with how traditional decision-making works within Haudenosaunee culture. So there are typically 3 parties that are of equal stature, equal standing, that volley an issue back and forth between each other for discussion and decision-making. Morgan, are you having a, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I thought it got deleted or something.
I don't know what happened. My Siri thing went off. I'm going to shut my phone off. Sorry.
So the 3 bodies that we adapted for our use is actually an adaptation that KSDPP had initiated all those years ago and has been working well for KSDPP all this time. And it's a consensus building process to ensure that each party has their concerns heard, their opinions or thoughts canvassed and shared and agreed upon and moved across each circle. So the idea is that whenever an issue comes up, that there's a protocol for how you move it from one party to the other, and the resultant decisions that are taken have had the input and have been enriched by the participation of everyone in each circle. So for our purposes at the NEIHR, we have an operations circle, a research circle, and a network advisory circle. And each of these are comprised of people who have different maybe a different area of focus and a different area of expertise where they can offer their experience and passion and thoughtfulness into what we want to do. So the operations circle, of course, has to do with the actual mechanics of operating the network. The research circle has more to do with the actual research that would occur and ensuring that the ethics are there and the trust is there and that things are moving forward in a good way. And the network advisory circle, of course, is made up of the academic institutions, the students, the communities, the Indigenous serving institutions, people in power, people with decision-making authority, to give their feedback into and their recommendations into what needs to happen and what steps need to be taken for things to be moving in a good way. And I think that's part of the goal of this type of structure, is that people feel that they're being heard, they feel that they're contributing, and they see the resultant decision enriched because they were there. So traditionally, decision-making, of course, was very time-intensive, necessarily, but the resultant decisions had that much more ownership and pride for the people who contributed towards it. So this is an approach to decision-making that's been active within Haudenosaunee culture for hundreds of years, if not more. And it's something that we want to share with our partners moving forward to say, this has worked for us, and we're hoping that this is something that you feel you can put your faith and your trust and your time and your passion into for a better result for all of us. And knowing that, you know, for a lot of these, they can be very time intensive. We also put together working groups so that if we know we have a specific topic or a specific question that we would like to see addressed or fleshed out, we can ask the people in these working groups to take it and run with it and come back to the three circles. So I certainly welcome questions about how this works or how you can be involved, especially. But I wanted to go through each circle so that everybody knows who is where and what your functioning is in there. I think that's it for that.
Want to add about the terms of reference?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Morgan has done incredible work working on our terms of reference for the NEIHR for sure. We are trying to, I think in a lot of ways we don't need to recreate the wheel. A lot of these things exist already. They make sense. They're steps that we need to take to ensure that there's a level of accountability, that there's a level of respect, I guess, to where our information comes and goes and how it's handled. So we went through all of our documents and we developed amongst ourselves a terms of reference for the NEIHR. Including, you know, the composition of the circles and the working groups and other ways of operating. I think part of what we're doing today is we're inviting people to become involved in that process. So most of what we've developed is not set in stone, and we're open to saying, you know, what have you seen work better? How would this work better for you? And I think that's really what this a new year for us is going to be, is building those relationships with people. Thank you, Morgan. I just wanted to go on a little bit and talk about what we've been doing all this time, because it has been a fair while, but we have had a lot of plates spinning. So I wanted to touch on the relationship with the National Coordinating Center, which is hosted at the University of Saskatchewan. Just to say that we're also involved in several, at several tables over there. So they do have a coordinators group for all the different coordinators for the 9 different NEIHRs across Canada to meet share information, mostly fleshing out different issues that might be going on and seeing what commonalities we have, what obstacles we're running into, and to help each other solve them. And then there's also an evaluation group which helps to inform how the overall NEIHR program will be evaluated by CIHR, but I'll leave that to Morgan to flesh out next.
Next, thank you. That was good. So what gonna word audons a Guego, a Morgan Gahanduni Yujets. Very glad to be a part of this network. Like Trina said earlier, I've been involved since 2018 when we started writing the grant. We actually even took a trip to Ottawa when they announced the grant. So it's been a very exciting couple of years, even during COVID times. Like Kaylee said, so I've been hired as the research coordinator. So my task mainly is to really take a look at the research priorities and to come up with a research strategy with the research circle and the working group. And Kaylee and I are both involved on, we attend those national coordinating meetings. The national coordinating meetings take place maybe every 6 weeks. And the National Coordinating Center meetings for evaluation take place every month. So I'll just, because we're talking about the National Coordinating Center, I'll just talk a little bit about the what goes on at with the evaluation committee. So what we have all the NEIHRs that come together. We have different representatives from each province. And so what we've done in the past year, we've really worked hard and a lot. And so what we did was we came up with this collective values document. And so with the National Coordinating Center is led by Simon Lambert, who's I think the executive director out of Saskatchewan. He's Maori, and Michael Heimlich, he's a consultant. So their task, the National Coordinating Center's task, is to give all the NEIHRs the support and to basically the bottom line is to create this evaluation strategy. So when year 4 comes, when it comes time to renewing this grant for a possible another 5 years, we have to have all our ducks in order, and we have to have this evaluation strategy set up from day one. So there's a set of guidelines that CIHR, there's a number of objectives that we have to all to achieve. In terms of the evaluation component of the Quebec NEIHR, my task then is to come up with an evaluation strategy for the Quebec NEIHR. So that's what I'm doing with the guidance of Trina and Michael Heimlich. I contact him a lot as well. So I'm using that same model of looking at all the different values that are listed in our terms of reference. We have a set of values. I'll give you an example: partnership, inclusivity, respect, open-mindedness, cultural responsibility, and sustainability. In fact, we had a special national meeting just on sustainability. You know, like thinking of ways already how we can sustain ourselves post funding and things like that. One example was cost recovery. Anyway, so that's what I'm working on right now, is this evaluation strategy to really operationalize our values and come up with some definitions and some outcomes and indicators and something to evaluate. So what I'm planning to evaluate our Quebec NEIHR after this first year is I'm creating this questionnaire. It's going to be presented to our core team this Thursday, which we meet every 6 weeks too. And I want to give everybody a questionnaire, and then after that I'm going to pull out themes from those questionnaires, and I would like to have a talking circle. So we're going to have a bit of a really qualitative narrative into our year 1 evaluation, because we're really trying to frame both our research and our evaluation around like an Indigenous methodological framework. So, and in terms of research, most of our activities will be focused on engaging with communities to see what their research priorities are. Of course, each community in the province of Quebec has their own set of research priorities, so we want to reach out to them in this coming year and help them in terms of resources, tools, connecting people with each other, and seeing how we can best support them. And finally, I just wanted to say that we're also in the midst of doing an environmental scan. Because of the COVID, we can't go into the communities obviously right now, but we are doing an environmental scan within the province of Quebec, in the universities, and two of our partner universities in Ontario, which is Queen's University and Carleton. So we hired a research assistant, Christine Lucier. She's Inuk, and she's currently doing the environmental scan. So and what this environmental scan is going to do for us after 6 months is really going to help us further establish our research priorities in terms of fulfilling one of our goals within the NEIHR, and that is to look at academic transformation and looking at the reconciliation plans that are on or not going on within the province. Okay, so I'm done. Thank you. No, Trina.
Thanks, Morgan. Trina, do you want to continue with hiring?
Sure. Well, when we were actually putting together the idea for developing this network, I definitely realized this was something very new for me because, developing a proposal for a network that is going to meet the needs of an entire region, which is the province of Quebec, required balancing a lot of things, like how are we going to set this up? But the way we had envisioned setting up the NEIHR is to do it very organically. It was to start it from, like I mentioned earlier, starting it from what we knew and what our strengths were and how we do research at KSDPP in Kahnawake, but also using and building upon the network of researchers that we had met over the 26 years that KSDPP has been sharing research and participating with different organizations. So it was also this idea that we had many partners and research partnerships and good links with universities as well. But also in thinking about how we would set up the NEIHR, we wanted to definitely hire people who understood this kind of research, understand the context of Indigenous communities. And also, as I've been reminded, when you're doing research, it's always nice when you can, work with people that are fun to work with and, and have good experience with that. And I was fortunate that I've had that with a lot of people in Kahnawake and McGill. And so the idea was at the beginning, we wanted to hire a network manager, so somebody with experience in project management, generally in management, and Kalia fit the bill for that. So, and I had experience working with Kalia on food security projects in the past. And also drawing from how we do things at KSDPP, there's the area of research, because this is a research project, so we will have a research program. And because this is an experiment, as Pierre likes to remind us, that we haven't done these sorts of things before, and the way we have envisioned developing a network this way, it's going to be important to document our accomplishments and how we're doing things in a way that is different. And so evaluation becomes an important part of that. And so obviously having a research coordinator to be leading on those aspects of the network is really important. So we hired Kalia and Morgan, And I also working with Sonia Peria Amede, who I had the honor of having as my first master's student at McGill University when I started there 3 years ago. And she is now still working with us. So, and we're after a year, we've had a lot of lessons. Personally, it's been a huge learning curve because it's the first time that I'm a lead on a grant of this type, which is a network, but also, you know, of a 5-year period with the possibility of renewal. So there's a lot of, I feel a lot of responsibility. I do feel like sometimes I'm over the fire, but I never feel that way for long because I have a lot of support with both the researchers, the core team, and of course the operations team who's there regularly. And so what we are, we'll now talk about where we're going with next steps in terms of as we continue to set up the NEIHR and respond to the reality that we're working in. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Pierre Haddad, who is going to be taking on the role of Executive Director. We haven't had that role, as you saw in our organizational chart and our governance structure, but it became very clear to me through this last year that we need a person who can take the role of an executive director in this kind of a project. So I'm going to turn it over to Pierre so he can introduce himself and say a bit about his thoughts about what's coming up for this interim position for a year. Pierre.
Merci beaucoup, Trina. Je vais dire quelques mots en français parce que je pense que c'est important de réaliser que c'est un réseau québécois et que, évidemment, il y a beaucoup de communautés francophones au Québec et que elles vont être comment dire, desservies par le réseau aussi bien que toutes les autres communautés anglophones. Et on va essayer le plus possible aussi de respecter les langues locales si ça nous permet à un moment donné surtout pour la participation des aînés, des fois, on va sûrement avoir de la traduction avec les langues autochtones également. Alors, je me présente, je suis Pierre Haddad, je suis un immigrant arrivé très jeune ici au Québec et puis je suis pharmacologue, donc j'étudie les plantes médicinales de la médecine traditionnelle autochtone, c'est un peu mon champ d'activité et j'ai eu le plaisir de travailler beaucoup avec les communautés Cri, Innu et Naskapi au Québec et Squamish en Colombie-Britannique. So you will have the translation anyways, but I'm an immigrant that came early here in Quebec and has been working mostly on, I'm a pharmacologist from Université de Montréal, and I really come to this network with a lot of excitement and hope because as Trina was saying, this is an experiment. We gave ourselves the objective to change the paradigm, and this is after many years of consultation from CIHR in communities across Canada. So I've been sitting on the board, the advisory board of the Institute of Indigenous Peoples Health, who is spearheading this initiative since 2009. So I've seen a lot of development of getting the information from the base, and this base was telling us, well, we need to change things from having research being done mostly from the top down and mostly from academic institutions having the control to having it from bottom up and having the communities taking more control and dictating not only the priorities, but how research is being carried out. So this is a pretty daunting task to operationalize this. I'm very honored of the trust that's put in me to help start it with this great team that we have. And I'm a very good listener. I've built a team on indigenous anti-diabetic medicines. So I have field experience working with communities, working with other researchers, building bridges mostly. So this is what I will devote myself over the next year to get it in the right way. And I'm a team person too, so this is really exciting because one person alone cannot certainly realize this great task.
Thanks, Pierre, and welcome aboard. We're excited to have you. We're so happy to have you. I just wanted to take a moment as well to talk about the fact that we're also currently hiring 2 additional employees for the network. We're looking for a communications advisor and a capacity building coordinator. The deadline for those applications is actually the 22nd. So if you are, or if you know someone who would be interested in taking on these roles, we have links to our job postings and job descriptions on our social media sites. So those links will be at the end of this presentation. Next slide, please. So approach to community engagement. As Pierre mentioned, much of the success of our NEIHR, or at least the goals of our NEIHR, are centered around community. We want to make sure that people in communities, community governments themselves, different community groups have access to the tools that they need to get the research done that they need to be able to make positive changes in their own communities. So the network itself needs community. We're not here to decide for the communities what they need. We're not here to tell them what they should do. We are meant to be a tool for those communities to refer to, for them to say, you know, we want to get this thing done. Maybe they know part of the puzzle and maybe they're needing some help or support, or, you know, someone to knock on a door, someone to give feedback on a plan, something. And that's what we want to do. It doesn't always need to be us, but we're hoping that we can be that integral piece that connects the right players to each other to make sure that the best work is done. So that's part of what our time from this point forward is to develop that community engagement so that people in the communities know who we are, so that we're able to develop those relationships. And when the questions come up about how do we get the information that we need, or how do we support the changes we want to make, that we're included in those conversations, and hopefully we can contribute to those positive changes in the communities. I think part of it is also that we are ourselves a community-led network. So through KSCPP's work, we've seen how successful, far-reaching, and impactful relatively simple ideas can be when people are passionate about executing them. So we want to be part of that change in other communities that feel the need to do so and want to include us. Part of our strategy also involves student support. We're looking a lot at community mobilization, and that includes the students in academia. We proposed student engagement, meaning we want students to also be involved in the decision-making about how the network operates, not only to be relegated to one function. Oh, you receive a scholarship, or oh, you're recognized for a project. We wanted to ensure that those students continue to have a voice as they should as community members anyway. So we want to involve students in decision-making through the network advisory circle, but also through other functions within the operations of the NEIHR. We offer financial support for students to allow them to continue their studies in ways that will contribute towards healthier outcomes for their communities. And one of the, I feel like, more innovative proposed actions of this network was to provide experience-ships for students, which is to say, providing financial support for students to be able to learn from Indigenous knowledge holders in their own communities, the things that they need to know to be able to affect healthy change in their communities. Again, part of our time right now is to develop those relationships to help us determine what makes best sense for how we roll out a lot of these things. So for some of the, some of the more pragmatic how something functions, we don't need to recreate the wheel, but for some things we want to hear from people to find out what has been a barrier to being able to achieve the well-rounded education that you're looking for, or how can we help support you to do the learning that you need to do to complement whatever you're doing in academia. So those are two main pillars of the NEIHR's function. And I'd like to pass it to Morgan to discuss about the research component.
Thank you, Kaelia. Yeah, so I've been in school for quite a while. So like Trina said earlier, I was just finishing up my PhD in, I think, 2018. But I did have the opportunity all these years to really engage in Indigenous research, Indigenous health research, Indigenous research methodology. So that's been my world for the past several years. In fact, between 2007, that's how I got to know Pierre. Between 2007 and 2012, I got to work with one of the other, the former NEIHRs, which I worked for the network, the NAMR was Network Environment for Aboriginal Mental Health Research with Lawrence Kermeyer. So I'm really in support of framing our research around Indigenous research methodologies and decolonization and working with non-Indigenous allies and staff that come to work with us. And so they are our allies that work alongside us, and they understand the research, the importance of this broad research. I mean, like, health research is a very broad term. We discussed that earlier. Health research could encompass so many different topics in terms of social determinants of health. So not much to add, like what I said earlier about the research, but I'm looking forward really to developing this research strategy as we engage with communities and we start actually doing the networking in the next upcoming year with planning with everybody and seeing what's out there and asking communities how we can help and how we can better partner with and network with different organizations. Did any of you have to add anything to that, Sonia, or anybody to research? Or Sonia, do you want to say anything about what you do or your what you're doing?
Je pense que Morgane a pas mal couvert. Dans le fond, je suis assistante de recherche pour ce projet et je travaille beaucoup pour l'instant au niveau des communications, entre autres, mais comme Kaelia l'a annoncé, on est en processus d'embauche pour une nouvelle personne. Puis je travaille aussi sur la planification des projets de recherche.
Cool. No, thank you. Merci. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. Okay.
Finally, what we're asking everyone to think about is how can we help each other? What I see for the NEIHR internally from this point moving forward is formalizing some of the processes we've had in mind, and that means getting feedback and information and engagement from the communities we are here to serve. And a lot of that depends on knowing each other and trusting each other. So that's going to be a lot of our work moving forward for this year. And I guess at this point, I'm just hoping to invite you and to welcome you to reach out to us to share ideas you may have, or invite us to conversations you're having elsewhere to help us become the network that our communities need. I think that was everything. Really, it's just that we're here to listen, despite the fact that we've been talking for 40 minutes straight. But our goal is to help communities do the research that they want to do. So we just want to be involved in that discussion and be as useful as we can. On that note, Trina.
And so I'm going to we're going to be starting the process of putting together the Network Advisory Circle. And it might seem like, wow, this network has been going for over a year, and we want to be directed by the community and guided by the community and have community voices and other users of research, like decision makers and knowledge users in the community, but we don't have our main group of representatives set up. And that's largely because of the context of the pandemic that started early in 2020. And we took guidance from our team, of all the partners who were on the grant at the time. We number 50 or more. And, I remember Amelia's words saying, we're going to go at the pace that we need to go at. We need to take the time it's going to take. And we all worked really hard this last year, the operations team, and we called a lot on the PI and the core team that's been guiding us overall. And it was a huge amount of work just to set the NEIHR up in the way that we have it now. So in a sense, it was kind of a blessing. And also we were very aware that communities, especially at the beginning back in March, we're still and are still adapting and responding to their community needs. So it was definitely not the time to be, knocking on communities' doors and asking for support. But now we feel that the time is appropriate for that. And we're going to be formally sending out invitations to all the partners actually on our grant who represent decision makers, community. But this invitation is open. And if you have somebody in mind who you feel would be an excellent representative of either of student voices, of youth voices, of elder voices, decision makers, please feel free to suggest them and we can reach out, because we would really like to have that group of people. En plus, on va essayer nos mieux de poursuivre les réunions en français et en anglais, parce que, comme Pierre a dit, c'est important, même que nous, comme une équipe, parlons plutôt anglais que français, on est vraiment conscient que l'importance d'offrir les opportunités de participer au moins en français et en anglais. Dans le futur, on aimerait, avec nos partenaires, de peut-être avoir des réunions en d'autres langues autochtones aussi. So with that, I think I'm really hopeful, and I look forward to extending this invitation and having this really important group who is playing a very important role to remind us of the different ways we need to be thinking about being there for communities to support their research visions.
Trina, if I can add maybe one point, is the great diversity that is recognized among First Nations, Inuit and Métis in Canada and in Quebec also. So having the broadest representation also from this diversity is going to be very important on our advisory circle.
Thanks, Pierre. And just to very quickly add to, I mentioned earlier about our guiding principles and values, and one of them is transparency. So I just wanted to say that Trina is doing a very good job. And like she said earlier, some of the, this 1 year went by so fast, and it seems like we didn't do much, but Trina really takes the time to really display what transparency is by even it could be a small decision and we have to wait for a meeting and get everybody's input. We had this big thing with this one study that the National Coordinating Center was going to put through. And anyway, I just wanted to add that Trina's really doing a great job.
Yeah, Morgan. Thank you.
Okay, so let me see. Okay, so we're pretty much done for now.
Yes, this is the end of our time. Actually, the questions. Yeah, let's do the questions before the closing. I didn't realize that this slide was the next one. I'm sorry about that. Thank you so much for coming. We're so happy to see that we actually have people in the room with us, and we would be happy to welcome any questions that you have through the chat now.
So who can see the chat?
Oh, I see it.
Okay, I can't see it.
No questions. Okay, bye.
Somebody had a question earlier.
Ah, Mylène Riva a levé la main.
Oh, Mylène.
Okay, see, I don't see that.
So I think you have to allow people to unmute and we can have a discussion like that too.
Sure.
That's our first time doing this. We're just figuring out some of the technical aspects of.
Yes, hello everyone, it's Mylène. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I didn't have a question. I think I just clicked to see if I had access to the chat, if there's anything, and I ended up raising my hand. So thank you very much for a great presentation. I look forward to being able to contribute to the network in, you know, whichever capacity you see that I can contribute. I will be happy to. I'm really happy to see this being launched and look forward to the next steps.
Thank you.
Est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose qu'on a oublié, Mylène?
Not that I can tell.
Okay.
Merci.
Merci.
Mylène.
So Brittany has a question about describing how often each of the groups will be meeting, coordinating research and advisory. So for the three main circles, we're looking at, we were meeting once a month for the operations, the core group, the core advisory group, just as we were building up. And now we're looking at every 6 weeks moving forward. So hopefully that's enough time for people to do the things they need to do between the meetings, enough time for the operations team to execute what they need to do. And for the working groups, we will leave it to the working groups to determine when they would meet.
And if I can just mention too, for the network advisory circle, which is made up of the various community voices, we see that happening probably 3 or 4 times a year. Because, you know, just the nature of bringing everybody together, and, you know, we would have it less frequent than the obvious operations meetings and the ones where we need the, you know, that sort of guidance. And I also just wanted to mention that these working groups are also going to be more project focused. So we have a training working group, for example, and there's a group of people who are, you know, overseeing that to get it started right now. But then, you know, that working group would be composed of people who would be interested, and it would make sense for addressing a specific training objective. And that's how we see the work of the NEIHR happening and having contributions within, you know, the relationships, is to set up these timely and topic and content specific working groups, and then having the, you know, the larger network structure to, you know, ensure that we're headed toward our goals.
Yeah, and for example, I had mentioned earlier about the evaluation and taking those values and operationalizing them. So I'll be calling out to people soon to put together a working group to help us further define the evaluation strategy. So that would be under like the research and evaluation working group, I think. Any other questions?
I don't see any other questions coming in. Are we ready to close? It's 10 to 3, so we're well within schedule.
Okay.
Tegwadundi, you ready?
Or
Yeah.
Amelia, did you
Okay.
add anything before we before you close?
Yeah, Tano. Everything was well done. It was totally well introduced and it was well explained. That's why you didn't have any questions, as many as you anticipated anyway.
Awesome. Yeah.
Okay. So the whole serious got Nikali Wessa. Wam giri wanoto se jite wata we ade ji again hudungo ga you go ja daroro. Jot kugi o hantu kari wade kwastuma wagi wano etse. Tano oni doka azo watu datsige. Onakti askan hotoge. Tano onakti keroli ti yoskatsinji skana. Tano kani gohli tan kasastasra was watste. Ji was watara. Tano oni wakatsanoni ti agwegus skana tinti te doaga ayu kwe ti agwego tinji kahia duga. Tano sokoni onaktia kenadu iti nista yuhunta ati joga de yagoda gari dege. I always joga de tunio tuni kwani gora. Tano oni onaktia kenadu giga ga ronesne de donado sa oyera. Ti agwego aramo runuha oni ona da gari dege. Tana I always ki agwego skana tinti aidoats de nega yuwatunde tano yuwatar kwe. Tini waktu ni kwa ni gora. So ona ki ya kahiwegi kan hotu ke kaya kwa jataro jut kwa kweko. Te kwa tunti yujats la diskareo ke ni wagi tarota. Ayawas ti jogo te aizu atakarite ke. Tan ayawas ti skana tinja deto wato hatste. Ona ki tuk ni awana ke. Nyawa.
Yeah.
Nyawa Tegwadundi.
Okay.
Okay. Anna.
Ana. Oh, panel, Brittany. Nyawa. Oh, for opening. Okay. Nice to see you all. Nyawa.
Thank you, Kalia, and thank you to the team for
Okay.
coordinating this really good presentation.
Yeah. Nyawa zuwakweko.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Yeah. Kunurukwa zuwakweko.